Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Howdy, how you doing? March 8th, sunny, chilly, but sunny. Loving it. Some friends picked me up yesterday and took me out to dinner, and I hadn't been out in Pittsburgh in a bit. So I was stunned to see daffodils. I mean, all the way up and out and full trees in bloom. I hadn't seen that. God knows it wasn't the case in Wisconsin. And then when I drove back, I hadn't seen it. So, wow, I was just marveling at that. Of course, the marveling should be held in some abeyance, because it's also a harbinger of the cataclysm of the warming of our planet. Oh, well, but it sure looked pretty, I'll tell you that. As usual, I mean, I have nothing here to talk about that isn't serious. And sometimes that seems depressing, but, you know, it's what is required that we pay attention. To turn away, I can see turning away in little bits and pieces for, you know, just to keep from going nuts. But ultimately, if you want to view yourself as a responsible citizen, you have to pay attention, I think. And it ain't easy. And it weighs on you. A few things that I have here that I want to talk about. Some are a little bit moldy. I mean, they might have come from before I headed west, but they're things that I've wanted to talk about. My genuine fear, and I don't use the word lightly. I mean, my genuine fear that we are heading toward something unthinkable in this country, a cataclysm, unthinkable. And a column written by New York Times columnist David French, perhaps you saw it, really resonated with me. And he was responding to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Don't you hate it that you even know that name? I, who can't remember anybody's name, when I remember a name, it's because it's been presented and represented in my consciousness. And I so hate that I know her name. But after her remarks about we need a national divorce, that red states and blue states need to separate. And he responded to that, by saying, first of all, it's impossible. That's impossible, as you would have said too. I mean, it is not as if we are totally separated geographically. The reddest states have oases of blue cities, usually cities in them. Often the generators of their economies and the seat of their government. And so, I mean, any physical separation is impossible. It ain't north-south like the last attempt at divorce. And he quotes a historian, James McPherson, who wrote about the time before the Civil War, as the nation just could not stop itself from heading down that road. And McPherson characterized the South and the people in the South, what would soon become the Confederacy, as possessed of an unreasoning fury. And that rings a bell. I mean, all you have to do is conjure up pictures of January 6th. Unreasoning fury. And what had created this unreasoning fury? It was John Brown, the abolitionist. And you may recall John Brown seized the Harper's Ferry, which was a federal arsenal intending to provoke a slave rebellion, the greatest fear of the slave-holding southern states, that slaves would rise up. And here was John Brown trying to help them do that. And the historian says that the fact that so many in the North supported him provoked a paroxysm of anger more intense than the original reaction to the raid on Harper's Ferry itself. And that created a Southern paranoia. Texas declared it would secede. Media in the South said that the North was distributing poison. People from the North were coming in and giving poison to slaves for the purpose of killing white Southerners. This was before Fox News, but you can understand the parallels here are not subtle. They hit you right between the eyes. So people already feeling that their way of life was threatened, being goaded further by outright lies into this unreasoning fury. Fear, hysteria is what took hold. And what resulted was this futile, murderous civil war that we now realize is still being fought. So French wonders if, given that there are so many parallels, is it conceivable that we could reach a point of no return and that the unreason prevalent again in our body politic could again trigger actual civil war. Now, I have little doubt that it wouldn't look like the last one, but I think it could look more like what I'm thinking Ireland or other places beset by civil war where there's I mean, I can't imagine, but I'm starting to be able to. And the part that kills me is when French said this. America's recent history makes me worry. And if we doubt the concern that we could once again end up fighting each other, you need only look back to January 6, 2021, and indulge in a single, simple thought experiment. What if Mike Pence had said yes? So there's that. By the way, that Dylan song, Chimes of Freedom, I have to tell you, it is in my head constantly. And I'm on the verge of just reading it out loud to you in hopes that I'll put it in your head. Isn't that like what you like to do with an earworm, is like send it on its way? Share it. I mean, it's a wonderful earworm. It is simply, it's just brilliant. But I would like my own head back, Mr. Dillon. Here's something else I have that's provocative, and I've wanted to share this with you. And it's on a subject where some of you disagree with me, and I am sort of neither here nor there, although I'm not quite where a supposed lefty should be. And I'm not a lefty, I'm a liberal, one of those old types. And this has to do, again, with something that Chris Rock talked about in his last special. It has to do with, words, the attack on words. It drives me insane, because anybody who listens to me knows that I value words. I value their meaning. And I go nuts when I can't find the right one, which happens more and more these days. And it's one of the reasons that I prefer communicating in the manner I do, which is, off the cuff. Because if left to write my thoughts, oh my God, I worry at each word. I mean, given the opportunity, which writing allows, to take your time, it's agony for me. So I value words. And I don't even know who wrote this thing I have. It was in the Atlantic. I took a screenshot of this, and I don't have the author's name, and I don't remember it. But the author says something that is it just rings so true to me. They say this huge expense of energy to purify our language reveals a weakened belief in more material forms of progress. If we don't know how to end racism, we can at least call it structural. Bans on words, or the self-torture they require of conscientious people. Are signs that we don't believe we can actually right the wrongs that this linguistic pretzeling, I just made that one up, creates. Because it makes, if you can't say something, it becomes impossible to face squarely the wrongs that you want to right, which is that's the starting point, to name it and then deal with it and change it. The author says prison doesn't become a less brutal place by calling someone locked up in it a person experiencing the criminal justice system. Obesity, isn't any easier or healthier for people who, God forbid, you should call fat or even overweight. Apparently, the new term is high weight. So all of these efforts, the writer says they are a synonym, actually, of deep pessimism. They belong to a culture in which symbolic gestures, like the change of a word, a tortured change of a word that everybody understands, that is preferable to action. If we can't speak the same language to each other, then we can't argue with each other. And there's nothing wrong with argument, right? There's nothing wrong with it. We've forgotten how. They say if each viewpoint has its own impenetrable dialect, then how do you move forward? Only a handful of the most fluent insiders will then possess the power to say what is real. The last sentence is this: it will be a sign of political renewal if Americans can say maddening things to one another in a common language that doesn't require any guide. Well, I have no problem arguing this with people, and I have changed many of the words I use when I think the first time I encountered somebody telling me that I shouldn't use that word was long before this kind of stuff going on now. It was in the 80s. And I was hosting the United Cerebral Palsy Telethon. And because of that, I was working quite closely with people at the Cerebral Palsy, United Cerebral Palsy. I was educating myself about it because if my job was, I was going to have to talk for hours and hours and hours and hours on end about the work they do. And I had used the term, the phrase, which I had always used and knew, once talking to one of the people there, when I said confined to a wheelchair. Well, she's confined to a wheelchair. And they stopped me and said, that's the wrong verb. Because a wheelchair helps, it frees somebody who would be confined. So to suggest that a wheelchair is confining when in fact a wheelchair is liberating. And man, that made so much sense to me. It made perfect sense. So I don't think I ever said it again. I said, uses a wheelchair. Little things like that make sense to me. But we have gone so far astray. It's mind-boggling. Okay, I'll stop on that. I will. This stuff coming out because of the Dominion lawsuit against Fox is, I think, so damning that something I never thought could happen might happen. That Fox will be found guilty. Now, that only happens if they go to trial. And that only happens if, as I suspect, Rupert Murdoch tries to buy his way out, tries to settle with Dominion and avoid trial. And that then rests on Dominion. And I've been talking to people, and people with law degrees, actually, who initially had said, nobody wins a suit like this. You have to prove absolute malice. It's almost impossible, blah, blah, blah. Well, we're all seeing the proof that they knew what they were saying was a lie and continued to do it. That they were not concerned with truth. They were concerned with retaining their audience and making their money. So if it's a winnable case against this huge behemoth of Fox, I can't say Fox News anymore because we all know it's a propaganda machine, Fox propaganda. If they can win, that could take them down or really injure them, really hurt them. And a trial would have to get the attention of some of the brainwashed, I would think, as well. So you gotta believe that they are scared, which should give you some pleasure, right? They're scared. Because we haven't, you and I have just seen a tiny little bit of what Dominion has, of the internal back and forth texts, emails that show Fox knew that they were misleading their audience for fear that they would lose their audience. And so some guys who have like legal training, who when this thing first started said, no way they're going to win, are now saying, you know what? I think they probably do have a win here. And they probably are not going to settle. If they know they have a win, why settle? Take them through the entire process and hang them out to dry. So that's potentially happy. I saw someone, I can't remember where, sort of, I picture this person with their hands and their arms up in the air with this, like scream of anguish because somebody wrote, isn't there a government power that could shut this corporate lie machine down, take it off the air, our air, the public airwaves? Oh, by the way, waves. I heard someone say airwaves the other day. Which one is it? I've always thought it was waves with a V. Like sound waves, air waves. But I think people say airwaves. Anyway, it's just a thought. I love words. And this person goes on to say, it just seems insane from a self-defense point of view for a nation to allow essentially sedition, insurrection to be served up as nightly entertainment. Now, it does raise this question. There is something called the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. And all you need to know is that, of course, they can't do a damn thing. In fact, they can't even get, the president can't even get his, the person he wants on its commission. He had a woman up, nominated her, sent her up to the Hill, where she was subjected to, talk about slander, from lobbyists, media lobbyists, taking her down, and to the point where, and the Republican senators who lined their pockets with the lobbyist money until she threw up her hands the other day and said, this is ridiculous, I'm out of here. But we have a system now in which deep-pocketed lobbies like Fox, Rupert, media, all of them can keep the duly elected executive from putting people on the regulatory committees and commissions that are supposed to police these media companies. In a position where they can do their jobs. I mean, it's reminiscent of finding out that the railroads, National Transportation Safety Board doesn't have a whole lot of clout that Southern Pacific does and Norfolk Southern does. And that's because as a people led by Republicans and capitalists that they serve, that we believe that curtailing in any way these corporations is a denial of basic economic freedom. Insane. But you gotta love that Tucker Carlson now sees his words. What he actually said out there in every newspaper, sitting there on the TV, maybe not on Fox. Dominion has him saying about Trump, I hate him passionately. What he's good at is destroying things. He's the undisputed world champion of that. He could easily destroy us if we play it wrong. Not a journalist, That's not a news operation. Unbelievable. Hey guys. I forgot to tell you this. I'm always forgetting to tell you something I intended to say right at the beginning. You know, my Gmail account, which had gone, I have it. So I'm now back on Gmail. If you're sending stuff to the Cullen Show thing, I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry. I'm not seeing it. So we're back to Lynn Cullen Show at gmail.com. All credit to my son who put me on a different server, and voila, there it is. Chuck writes, your commentary at the beginning of your show could not have come at a better time for me. Last night, I was at a loss for words when my 27-year-old daughter asked me if there was anything she could do to help this country other than to cast her one. Oh, God. Goes on. My daughter first dipped her toes into the political waters when she cast her vote in 2016 for Hillary Clinton. I had to point out to her the last 7 years were atypical, and that I grew up knowing a political system that was kinder. Is facing the loss of her two best friends, two gay gentlemen who are moving overseas because they foresee that these last atypical years are soon to become typical. Oh my God. I don't know what to tell her, but I'm going to have her listen to your show. Oh, don't torture her further, Chuck. And you shut up over there. Anyway, have that landline. Why? Yeah, you can't blame her for wondering if it works, because she has seen, what she has seen is that it doesn't. No, you can't. And I wish her two gay friends would have more staying power too. Really, seriously. I don't know where they're running to, but this kind of insanity is happening all over the world. I so feel for your daughter, my son. And you're right, they have no sense that they never were given a sense that it works. I mean, imperfectly, slowly, maddeningly, frustratingly, but it works. And it still, every once in a while, kind of does. I mean, Biden is the president, right? Josh Shapiro is the governor. Votes still count. And the fact that most Americans are on our side is why the other side is trying to create a belief that votes don't count or aren't counted. Trying to sow all of that mistrust. They've been brilliant at it. Line them up and shoot them. I am not kidding you, but traitors! No, I would not shoot. Think about it. They're despicable. Tony writes, it would be a dream come true. See Fox pay for these sins. But somehow I just don't believe it'll happen. I understand that. Believe me, I know. I just refuse to get my hopes up. The right thing will happen. Too many friends. Friends with power. We got power too, though. And we shouldn't discount our power. I do worry that we are so exhausted by the just daily outrages, hourly outrages, and the fact that we now have this, technology that doesn't give us a moment. We back in the day, we didn't know everything that horrible happening in every little town, city, and now we do. And so it's good to remember that if you watch the news, like the local news, and you don't see your life portrayed, you look at the local news, this is the news in Pittsburgh, and you think, let's hear not what my life looked like today. News is drawn to cataclysm. News is drawn to pain and suffering. And no one opened up a news show, with, and we go live to Lynn Cullen in downtown Pittsburgh. I wanted to say absolutely nothing happened here today. Oh, people walked these sidewalks and went into the stores and restaurants. That's not the news, but that is our lives largely. And so I do think it's wise to try to keep your balance in perspective. And I was saying earlier that, to be a good citizen, we do not have the right, I don't think, to tune out. But I think we should be selective about how we tune in. And if things, local news, you have to know what's going on locally. But television, and that's where I started my career, television is pretty much the former commissioner of the FCC a million years ago, I think he in the 50s, early 60s. His name was Newton Minow. Called television. Then a vast wasteland. And, it's actually worse than that. The news side. Not totally, but yeah. Oh my, you guys. I don't know where to. I got so much here I want to talk to you about. I'm just I'm kind of paralyzed. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what I threatened I was going to do. I'm going to give you my earworm. Seriously, I won't give it to y'all, but I got to get this thing out of my head. This is Bob Dylan's lyrics to the music. Don't worry, I won't sing. Don't worry. But this is called Chimes of Freedom, and I think it's from 1960. Or it's a long time ago. But if this ain't poetry, can I read it? God bless you. Don't worry, it won't take long. We ducked inside the doorway, thunder crashing, as majestic bells of bolts struck shadows in the sound, seeming to be the chimes of freedom, flashing. Flashing for the warriors whose strength is not to fight. Flashing for the refugees on their unarmed road of flight. And for each and every underdog soldier in the night. And we gazed upon the chimes of freedom. Even though a cloud's white curtain in a far-off corner flashed, and the hypnotic splattered mist was slowly lifting. Electric lights still struck like arrows, fired but for the ones condemned to drift, or else be kept from drifting. Tolling for the searching ones on their speechless seeking trail, for the lonesome-hearted lovers with too personal a tale, and for each unharmful, gentle soul misplaced inside a jail. And we gazed upon the chimes of freedom flashing. Starry-eyed and laughing, as I recall, when we were caught, trapped by no track of ours, for they hang suspended. As we listened one last time, and we watched with one last look, spellbound and swallowed till the tolling ended. Tolling for the aching ones whose wounds cannot be nursed, for the countless confused, accused, misused, strung out ones and worse, and for every hung-up person in the whole wide universe. And we gazed upon the chimes of freedom. Flashing birds, flashing birds. Oh man, I'm telling you, what a friggin' genius. What a good heart he had. Man. Oh, there was this was hysterical. A headline I saw in the business section, I think, of the New York Times a few days back, and it said, "You're now a manager. Forget about overtime pay." And boy, oh boy, I laughed because I said, this is news? This is news? This is such old news, it's a joke, because I remember, had to be in the 80s, early 90s, when a new boss came in at WTAE-TV, and clearly he had been tasked by the Hearst Corporation to give them more money. And so heads rolled and things shrunk. And one of the things he did, so I saw it in real time. All of a sudden, these hardworking souls, some of them in the newsroom, the producers who did a lot of the behind-the-scenes grunt work, all of a sudden, they were given new titles. And it wasn't grunt. It was something that sounded pretty good and even managerial. And then they were told, you're management now. You are management. Congratulations. And then they got their first paycheck, since they'd gotten that incredible honor and promotion. And damn, if it didn't turn out that promotion cost them a lot of money. They got the nice sounding title. They got to say, well, I'm a manager at Public TV, but I am going to the food bank now. And this is a whole article now about how this is now enjoying a huge resurgence. People already not making enough, doing grunt work, at least by federal law, have to be given overtime if they work beyond 40 hours. Those hours get paid at a higher rate. But if you're a manager, you're salaried. And salaried workers don't get no overtime if they're under a certain, I don't know, whatever. It's a way of screwing people, which is what business owners, big corporate owners, just love to do. But that headline, really made me remember back then. I remember feeling such outrage. I couldn't, these are people I knew. And the shock and betrayal they felt. They thought they'd been given this honor, this gift, that their hard work had been rewarded. No, it was just a capitalist scheme to get around a pesky law. That was government getting in our corporate system. We know how to get around it. We're making you all managers. Here's something I couldn't believe when I saw it. First of all, I can't get over that she's the governor, but it doesn't matter. I'm talking about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she who we first met when she was the press secretary to the president of these United States, and she lied and lied and lied and then lied some more. She is now the governor of Arkansas, which I guess the governorship there is owned by the family because her father, Huckabee, had been a horrible governor there. So this headline says that Governor Sanders signs law loosening child labor protections. Now, that she would do this after we have all been treated to stories of Dickensian horror about children working overnight in butcher shops, cleaning the death machines with their jagged edges and dealing in acids and other stuff to clean. And they're getting hurt, they're getting burned, some as young as 13 years old. And we have laws on the books that say you can't do that. So I believe this company called Hacker that hired these kids in various states. By the way, most of these kids are brown. They're migrants looking for a better life for them and their families, working at dangerous, brutal jobs, 8 hours in the night, and then going to school. 13, 14, 15. So the company was fined. I forget what, it was like $1.5 million. I'm telling you. That's like vending machine change. And nobody else, the only people who are being harmed are the poor kids who got found out, who are in the country illegally, and in fact, their parents, in some cases, have been jailed for child abuse, allowing their children to work. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, however, finds the current child labor laws, quote, burdensome and obsolete. And so she signed a bill that the happy little children in her despicable state of Arkansas can, in fact, work if they're 14 in jobs in meat packing plants and others. When will people see the horror of what Republicans are about? When will I don't understand. I don't get it. How so many people refuse to believe the reality of what Republicans are about, who they represent, who they care about. Unbelievable. And, you know, another story that's, I was joking about it the other day, but it's not funny. It's been pretty astonishing, the sight of the millions and millions of French folks in their streets, shutting their country down. By the way, that's more than Americans have done ever. We don't, as one, go into the streets to shut the place down, which we should do. Never can quite get that together. But old, young, black, white, everything in between, the French have been in the streets. What I joked about was what prompted them to go into the streets. And for any American, seems mind-boggling. They are protesting, as I'm sure you know, Macron's intent to push the retirement age in France up 64. It's now 62. And they already get, I mean, I assure you that the kind of social safety net in France is astonishing. An American would think, what? I mean, here, I learned this today. In France, only a little over 4% of retirees live below the poverty line. Look at that. I don't know. They don't tell me what the percentage is in the United States of America. And I can tell you, it is so much higher. It might even be like 5 times, 8 times higher. And the reason an old French person is able to live with dignity is because of their amazing safety net. And they're doing it retiring at 62. And in reading an article trying to explain to Americans why the French think this is what? You got to work till 64? I was like, geez, oh, poor you. I'm fucking 75. I'm still working, but I'm working because I want to. That's the difference. But the French, what it made me realize is, again, how our own experience, what we think is the way things work, that we assume that's the best way. Well, in our country, you work till 65, we this and that, and you might get a little pension. Not anymore, but you might. And this, that, and the other thing. And we think that's the way it should be. But in France and a lot of other countries, my God, the benefits that come with a job, the amount of vacation, sick leave, family leave, all that is off the chart. And it turns out that the French, knowing their way of life, value the fact that in their country, they are not seen as drones, but rather as people, and that there should be a balance, a nice balance between work and leisure. Why they have so many vacations, you can't imagine. They don't work anywhere near as much as we do. That a French guy is quoted in here saying, we're capable of being as productive as Americans, but don't forget, life is not just about work. And I'm thinking, see, that in America, we don't agree. And this is what Americans don't know because of, our experience here, our unique experience, the way things operate. We assume that's the way they should operate or something, because it's what we know. Our system is extremely cruel. Cruel to families, cruel to women, minorities, cruel to old people and young. It doesn't matter. We are a punitive, cruel country, and we don't even recognize it. We are just looking at the fact that we got more of our country folk rotting in jails than almost any other country, so-called civilized. I don't think we belong in the civilized category, frankly, because of how so many Americans embrace an inhumanity to the least of us. So I was laughing at the French, and, now I'm thinking, fight. You fight for that way of life in which you are not seen as a cog in the economy, but as a fully formed human being who deserves a wonderful life. And in France, the reason there's so many people in the streets is also because this is how, after World War II, they were humiliated, beat up, and did not emerge as the power that they had been. This is how they took a sense of respite, of making and remaking themselves. They created what they call social protection, so that everyone in the country would be cared for, which is un-American an idea either, but this is French. And the trade-off, according to one French guy, was we were not to be as powerful, but we would have something that so many other nations don't. The best social protection system in the world is extremely generous and extremely costly, but we pride ourselves on that value, on that ethic. That is part of our national sense of what it is to happily be a citizen of. I don't know. I'm just saying it makes you think. That's all. It makes you think. I'm not saying they're totally right. We're totally wrong. But man, whoa. I feel for us. I really, really do. All right, I guess that's it. I just looked at the clock. I was shocked. Here it is. Okay, guys, I'll see you tomorrow, and we're back to normal. I can't believe it. Until next week when I have some laser kind of procedure on one of my eyes. And I don't know if that means I'll be able to be here Monday because I don't find out till Friday when my surgical appointment is, right? These fuckers. The way our system works is never help anybody in their own personal life because they don't have a personal life. Their personal life is unimportant. I'll be here tomorrow. I promise you that. Okay? Have a good one.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.